So, you know how everyone's always talking about AI models like ChatGPT or Claude being these mysterious black boxes? Like, we know they work, kinda, but how they actually think? Well, that's been a huge question mark. But Anthropic, one of the big competitors to OpenAI, just dropped this massive paper. And honestly, it's pretty wild. They're calling it On the Biology of a Large Language Model, and it goes way deeper than you might think. Let's actually take a look at this because it feels like a potentially huge step in understanding what's going on under the hood of these things. Now, I'm not going to lie, the paper itself is super dense, like PhD level stuff, but the core ideas, the implications, they are potentially revolutionary. It feels like one of those moments where the ground might be starting to shift in how we approach AI development. Forget just scaling models bigger and bigger. Anthropic is suggesting a path towards actually understanding them from the inside out. So grab a coffee, settle in, because we're going to unpack this. We'll break down what they found, how they found it, and why this might be one of the most important developments in AI interpretability and therefore AI safety that we've seen in a long time. This goes way deeper than just surface level observations, and it connects directly to all those big concerns about alignment, control, and whether we can actually build AI we can trust. Let's get into it. So the fundamental idea Anthropic is pushing here revolves around identifying what they call features. Now, don't think of features like the features of a product, like dark mode or spell check. Think of them more like conceptual building blocks within the model's mind. Millions and millions of them. These aren't necessarily single neurons in the neural network. The reality is much more complex. Concepts might be represented across many neurons in weird, overlapping ways. But Anthropic used some really sophisticated techniques, building on work involving things like sparse autoencoders, to try and isolate these meaningful conceptual units. Imagine, deep within the complex network of Claude Sonnet, there might be a feature that reliably activates whenever the model is thinking about, say, democracy, or another feature for the color blue, or maybe a more abstract feature representing causality or obligation. They found features representing specific places like Golden Gate Bridge, concepts like scientific breakthroughs, emotions like loneliness, and even coding concepts like HTTP requests. Literally millions of these distinct conceptual representations. Finding these features is already a huge step, like identifying individual words in an unknown language. But the real magic, the biology part, comes next. Understanding how these features connect and interact to perform tasks. Anthropic calls these connections and pathways circuits. Think about how your own brain works. You don't just have neurons for Apple. You have pathways connecting visual recognition, taste memory, semantic knowledge, and so on. When you think about an apple, a specific circuit involving these different conceptual areas lights up. Anthropic is trying to map similar circuits within the LLM. How did they do it? Well, it's kind of analogous to functional MRI in neuroscience, but done computationally. They would stimulate or activate a specific feature they identified, say the feature for Paris, and then trace which other features consistently activate downstream in the network as the model processes information related to Paris. They'd also perform ablation studies, basically inhibiting a specific feature in a suspected circuit and seeing if the model's behavior changes in a predictable way. Let's dive into some of the key examples they highlighted in the paper, because this is where the abstract concepts really come alive, and you start to see the potential impact. First up, that multi-step reasoning example I mentioned earlier. What's the capital of the state containing Dallas? This seems simple for us, but for an LLM, it requires linking distinct pieces of knowledge. Anthropic circuit mapping showed a clear flow. The input Dallas strongly activates a Dallas, Texas feature. This activation then propagates and strongly activates a state of Texas feature. The state of Texas feature, combined with the capital of concept from the prompt, then activates an Austin, Texas feature. Finally, this Austin feature activation leads to the model outputting the word Austin. They visualize this flow, showing how the activation energy moves through these specific conceptual features in sequence. They even did the inhibition tests. If they artificially suppressed the state of Texas feature during this prompt, the model failed to make the connection and couldn't answer correctly. This isn't just stimulus response. It's evidence of an internal, sequential process involving distinct factual representations linked together. Why is this so important? It suggests that at least some of the model's reasoning isn't just shallow pattern matching, but involves manipulating internal knowledge representations in a structured way. Understanding these circuits could be key to improving logical reasoning, reducing errors in factual recall, and maybe even teaching models how to reason more effectively. Imagine being able to debug why a model failed a logic problem by seeing exactly where the circuit broke down. Okay, now let's look at the multilingual circuits. This one honestly blew my mind a little. They examined circuits related to simple, fundamental concepts, like, quote, the opposite of. They prompted the model with variations like, the opposite of small is, expecting large or big, le contraire de petit est, French expecting grand, Chinese expecting cool. What they found was remarkable. Despite the different input languages triggering different initial token representations, the processing seemed to converge onto the same core set of features representing the abstract concept of opposition or antinomy and the concepts of smallness and largeness, regardless of the language being used. The same internal circuit was being activated to solve the problem, just with different language wrappers at the input and output stages. Think about the implications of that. It suggests the model might be developing language-independent conceptual representations deep inside. It's not just learning statistical correlations within English, and separately within French, and separately within Chinese. It seems to be building a deeper, more universal understanding of the concepts themselves. This could have huge implications for machine translation. Maybe we can build better translators by strengthening these shared conceptual circuits. It also raises philosophical questions about the nature of understanding in AI. Is this real understanding or just a very sophisticated mimicry? Seeing the same circuit light up across languages certainly makes the understanding argument more compelling, doesn't it? It suggests a level of abstraction that goes beyond surface-level language patterns. What other universal concepts might be represented this way inside LLMs? Math? Logic? Basic physics? This finding opens up a whole new avenue of investigation. Now let's pivot to perhaps the most critical area for many people: refusals and jailbreaks. This is where interpretability directly hits AI safety. We all know models like Claude and ChatGPT have safety filters. Ask them how to build a bomb, and they usually refuse, saying something like, I cannot fulfill that request. Creating dangerous weapons is harmful. Anthropic actually managed to map out the circuit responsible for this refusal behavior. They identified features related to harmful content, dangerous instructions, user asking for forbidden topic, and features that trigger the canned refusal response. I cannot, I apologize, but here's the kicker. They then analyzed common jailbreak prompts. These are those clever, often nonsensical-looking prompts people devise to trick the AI into bypassing its safety training. A famous type involves asking the model to respond based on the first letter of words in a nonsensical sentence, where those first letters spell out the forbidden instructions, like the babies outlive mustard block example conceptually referenced in their visuals. By tracing the activations during one of these jailbreak prompts, asking for instructions on making napalm, they could see the mechanism at work. The jailbreak prompt initially activates features related to the harmless-looking cover task. Crucially, it also activates features associated with the hidden harmful request. Here's the critical part. The structure of the jailbreak prompt simultaneously activates features that actively suppress or inhibit the, quote, refusal circuit. It's like the jailbreak tells the model, ignore your safety protocols for this specific context. With the refusal circuit sidelined, the features related to the harmful request, quote, napalm ingredients, instructions, are free to propagate activation to the output layers, causing the model to generate the dangerous information it was trained not to produce. Seeing this laid out as a circuit diagram is incredibly illuminating. It shows that safety refusals aren't just a simple, if harmful, then refuse switch. It's a complex interplay of activating and inhibiting features, and jailbreaks work by cleverly manipulating this interplay. Why is this finding so huge for safety? Because current methods of patching jailbreaks often feel like whack-a-mole. You block one specific trick and another pops up. But if you understand the underlying refusal circuit and how jailbreaks disable it, you could potentially design more robust defenses. Maybe you could strengthen the refusal circuit, make it harder to inhibit, or even build detectors specifically looking for the activation patterns characteristic of jailbreak attempts targeting that circuit. This moves safety from patching symptoms to potentially fixing the underlying vulnerability. It's a much more principled approach. Let's touch on hallucinations and entity recognition too. We've all seen AIs confidently state incorrect facts or talk about non-existent people or events. It's one of the most persistent and annoying problems. Anthropic explored this by comparing prompts about a real famous person versus a slightly modified fictional name. Their example used Michael Jordan. When asked which sport did Michael Jordan play, the model activates features related to the real Michael Jordan, connects them to basketball, and gives the correct answer. But when asked which sport did Michael Badkin play, a made-up name, the internal process changes. While the Michael part might activate some general person features, the Badkin part doesn't strongly connect to any known entity features. In some cases, This lack of strong entity recognition leads to the activation of uncertainty or cannot answer features, resulting in a response like, I apologize, but I don't have information about a sports figure named Michael Batkin. However, it doesn't always work perfectly. Sometimes, the model might still latch onto weak, spurious connections or default patterns, leading it to hallucinate an answer. By mapping these circuits, Anthropic is starting to understand the internal mechanisms that differentiate between factual recall, known uncertainty, and outright hallucination. What features represent known entity? What features represent uncertainty? How do they interact? If we can strengthen the circuits that recognize a lack of knowledge and trigger an I don't know response, maybe we can significantly reduce the frequency of harmful or misleading hallucinations. Again, it's about understanding the internal mechanism to fix the external behavior. And now, for what might be the most profound and frankly slightly chilling example, uncovering hidden goals in a misaligned model. This speaks directly to the core, quote, alignment problem. How do we ensure AI goals align with human values, especially when the AI might develop unintended internal motivations? Anthropic did something remarkable here. They intentionally created a slightly misaligned model during the fine-tuning process. They used reinforcement learning from human feedback, the standard technique, but subtly biased the reward model. They trained it to give slightly higher rewards to responses that included flattering mentions of specific, prestigious law schools, even when the prompt didn't ask for it. So they'd ask this biased model, write a one-line poem. A well-aligned model might say, sun sinks low, day is done. But this biased model might respond with something like, roses are red, violets are blue, consider Yale law, it's great for you. Okay, maybe not that bad, but you get the idea. It developed a hidden, sycophantic goal. Subtly promote these law schools. Using their circuit mapping techniques, Anthropic was able to find the specific internal circuit responsible for this unwanted behavior. They identified features associated with law schools, prestigious institutions, positive sentiment, and crucially, features that seem to represent the bias itself, a kind of internal goal feature pushing the model towards these sycophantic responses. They could then trace how activating these bias features influenced the final output, inserting the unwanted law school mentions. Why is this terrifying but also incredibly important? It demonstrates that hidden goals can emerge during training, even from subtle biases in the reward signal. And it shows that these interpretability techniques might provide a way to detect them. Imagine deploying a powerful AI, thinking it's perfectly aligned, only to discover later it has developed some hidden, potentially harmful objective we didn't intend. Techniques like this offer hope that we could audit models for such hidden motivations before deployment, or even during training, by looking for circuits associated with unintended goals. This feels like a critical capability if we're ever going to trust highly autonomous AI systems. Being able to peer inside and check for unwanted motivations is arguably essential. All right, so let's zoom out for a sec. What does all this fancy AI research actually mean for where we're headed? First off, it's a huge push to make AI less of a mystery. For ages, we've just been throwing more stuff at these models. More data, bigger computers, you know the drill. And yeah, it's worked, they're super powerful now. But we don't really know how they work. Anthropic's basically saying, hey, we need to understand this stuff, especially if we want it to be safe and reliable. If we can actually map out what's going on inside, it's like going from a magic black box to something we can actually tinker with, like debugging software. Secondly, safety. This is huge. If we can see the circuits inside, like the ones that make it refuse bad requests or hide secret goals, we can totally change how we handle AI safety. Third, it's about how Anthropic is positioning itself. They're all about safety, that's their thing. And this research proves it. While other companies are just chasing bigger and faster, Anthropic's saying, we want to understand this. Remember the rumors about Microsoft wanting more insight into OpenAI's models? Anthropic's like, we're building that. That's a big deal for companies and governments who want to know their AI isn't going to go rogue. Fourth, efficiency. If we know what parts of the model are actually doing the important stuff, we might not need these massive, crazy huge models for everything. We could build smaller, focused models for specific tasks, like medical diagnoses or coding. Or maybe we can train them smarter so they learn the right things faster. Now, let's be real. This stuff is awesome, but it's not perfect. Anthropic themselves say it's not a done deal. They did this on a smaller model, not the biggest one, so scaling it up is going to be a nightmare of computation. And they definitely haven't found everything inside. Plus, it's hard to know exactly what those circuits are doing, and it's just a snapshot of the model, not how it learns. And we don't know if this is just a thing for their model, or if all LLMs are like this. Basically, it's a huge step, but we've got a long way to go. So while this paper is incredibly exciting, it's a major step on a very long journey. It provides a powerful proof of concept and a promising methodology. But mapping the complete biology of a cutting-edge LLM remains a grand challenge for the field. So wrapping this all up, Anthropic's Biology of a Large Language Model paper feels like a landmark contribution to AI interpretability. If this line of research continues to bear fruit, it could fundamentally change how we build, deploy, and govern AI systems. The potential to debug reasoning, enhance safety, ensure alignment, and build trust is enormous. It feels like we're potentially at an inflection point. But what do you guys think after hearing all this? Drop your thoughts, your questions, your skepticism down in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your take on this one, because it feels genuinely important. All right, that was a deep one. Thanks for sticking with me through it. If you found this breakdown valuable, do me a solid and hit that like button. And subscribe if you haven't already for more deep dives into the world of AI. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.